Let's talk about dyslexia. So I have been a teacher for a long time and I didn't know about dyslexia. Then I learned all the misunderstandings about dyslexia. And then now, having worked with so many kids with dyslexia and seeing the brilliance in them, I now feel like I understand it a lot better and I want to share it with you in simple terms and also sort of clear up some misunderstandings. So first of all, the biggest misunderstanding I see is people asking if a child who's writing letters backwards, like a B versus a D, if that means that they have dyslexia. And that is not the case, because kids who have dyslexia or don't can both write letters in reversal up to around age 8. In English, a lot of the letters are lines in a circle in many different ways, and it's really hard for them to remember that. And it just takes some letter stories, which is a different video, to explain that. So, setting that aside, dyslexia in itself is a language-based disability. It's not a visual-based disability. So it's not a reading disability. It's related to language and how you hear sounds and how the brain processes those sounds. So it can show up in reading, writing, and also vocabulary. And that's why I'm going to separate my explanations into these 3 sections. That also means that a kid could have dyslexia but still be able to read well. Maybe it shows up the most in their writing or spelling. Let me start with reading. In reading, it can start with when they first learn a letter. When they see a letter, they may have a hard time retrieving what sound matches that letter. So it may take them a while, which requires a lot of repetition. It also requires you to teach each individual sound separately with a really cool lesson, something that they can hold on to, that each of these sounds have a group of words related to it, and to memorize and understand these sounds. The second part is when they look at a word, to be able to retrieve every individual letter of that word and remember what sound that is and then string them together. It could take a while. That's why you'll notice some kids with dyslexia reading very slowly, because their brain is running back to their library to remember which sounds they are. So what we would do here is do some tactile learning with Play-Doh or buttons and helping them break apart each sound faster so that they can combine it together faster. As they get older, reading can be difficult if there's so many words on a page, like a chapter book, that it becomes visually crowded. And I've had students who say they prefer if the words are more spread out. So I can take a word that they're having a hard time decoding and write it on a whiteboard. Just because it's bigger, it's more spread out, immediately they can decode it. Just because it doesn't have all the other words around it and there's more space. I highly suggest getting books that are double-lined or larger font. On a phone, I would increase the font. Some of my kids with dyslexia automatically do this because it helps them. Now let's talk about writing. So writing is so fascinating for kids with dyslexia because they may have a challenge with spelling. However, they might be really gifted in storytelling, and we don't often get to see that because their spelling is getting in the way of them being able to show you how incredible they are with writing. So they'll get really frustrated during writing. So what they will do instead is they might have trouble with the order of the sounds because they're so focused on retrieving every single sound that they know that there's supposed to be these sounds, but then they're not quite sure what order they would be in. So then this word when might be spelled like this. It doesn't mean that they don't know how to spell it. It's just that the order is hard. So I will teach them strategies like strengthening their listening muscles to be able to break apart each sound part with sound balls or something tactile, and then they are able to segment it before they write it. That's why it's really important to teach individual sound patterns so that they can retrieve these easily when they have to blend them together into a word. So this takes them a long time, and therefore sometimes a really creative kid who has dyslexia gets so frustrated because their stories might be extremely lengthy and complex, but when they're writing, they have to simplify it for the sake of making sure they can spell each word, and then they get a little bit nervous about that. That's why we separate it, because for a lot of my kids with dyslexia, I'll have them dictate or orally tell their stories, and I'll type it for them. And I love it because some of them are so creative. We end up helping them become a published author, and they notice that their writing skills are amazing, their confidence goes up, and then on the side we work on spelling and also apply accommodations for them when they're writing long stories. Another way that writing can be difficult for them is retrieval. So when they spell much, they might spell it M-U-C-K. It's not that they don't know the sound pattern at the end, it's that the H and the K are sitting next to each other in their brain library because they both have a long stick and they both go up. And so as they're going up, they retrieve the K by accident when they meant the H. When you see this, you want to advocate for them because you know that these letters look similar enough that they may have retrieved the wrong letter, not that they don't understand the spelling pattern. So these are things that we'll practice repetition. We'll do a lot of really fun games or create stories with it so that they can retrieve these sounds and be able to put them in the right order much easier. And then we'll also do storytelling and story writing on the side to reinforce that gift of theirs and hone in on their special superpower of telling stories by helping them publish books. So that is writing. I hope that is helpful. We're down to the last category, which is speaking or vocabulary. I think this category is talked about the least with kids with dyslexia, and this is the most interesting one for me. Again, it's related to sound, right? And that is grouping vocabulary words that sound similar together and misunderstanding the meanings of them. So for example, incident, they might confuse as innocent when they mean incident because they sound very similar. So kids with dyslexia will be able to group a lot of words into similar families. And I think it's so fascinating because it's always words I never thought of that sound similar. But then what we have to do as a teacher or as a parent is to help them recognize the difference by checking in on, did you mean this word or did you mean this word? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You notice that they sound the same. Here's the difference between those two words. This is again a retrieval challenge where they're all in the same little corner of the room and they've retrieved the wrong word that sounds similar than another one, and they just need repetition and practice to help them understand the difference between these words. All right, so if this was helpful, then I would love for you to share this with other people so we can make sure that we're all understanding dyslexia correctly and also in a way that everybody can understand. It's not something super mysterious that you got to do a lot of research for. But if you found this video really helpful, please like and subscribe to this channel. I like to share a lot of tips that I have learned from working with a lot of neurodivergent kids to you so that you can apply it to the kids you are working with. Thanks for watching. Bye.